So I feel like I say it time and time and time again that this game doesn't really have a good tutorial system. And you know what? Because of that, I decided it's time to do something about that. So while there might not be an in-game tutorial system, I'm gonna give you my best tutorial for YBA right now. This series, if people like it, will likely span more than one part because the first part I've got here is only going up to your first prestige and is very basic. So if you're someone who's already gone through the first prestige and knows how to play, there's not really too much you're going to be able to gain from this. But if you are very, very new, or you're just looking for the optimal ways to level up, here you go. This is what I got for you. I don't want to harp on too long in the introduction though, so let's get to it right now. So you've booted up YBA and you're greeted with the first screen. You've got 3 buttons. You've got play, help, and credits. Help is the most helpful of all of these, and you should absolutely read through the help tab if you haven't already, because there's quite a few helpful things in here. I mean, it is the help tab after all. A lot of the things in the help tab I'll be going over more. The credits tab is completely worthless. It just tells you the credits, not super helpful, and play gets you started. When you load into the game, the first thing you can see is at the bottom right hand corner of your screen, you have a little menu button. If you open this up and you go to settings, there's a few options. You can change up your keybinds, turn the music off, toggle the damage numbers, turn on cinematic mode, which removes all of the HUD elements, and turn on low graphics mode, which I'm not going to show here, but if your computer struggles on running the game, you can use low graphics, and it will make most of the textures in the game a lot smoother and with less detail to try to make it so it's easier to run. When it comes to rebinding controls, this is all personal preference, but I'll talk about things as if they're the default, even though I use a custom control scheme. As for the other buttons on here, there's the shop, which you shouldn't use, stand storage, which you don't have access to quite yet, cosmetics, which you also don't have yet, your skill tree, which I'll talk about shortly, quests, which as of right now you don't have any, and the gangs tab, which you just started, so you don't really have these. The first action I recommend you take in the game is apply some points to vitality. The game starts you with 2 points, you might as well use them for vitality. The vitality skill increases the amount of health you have. Before you've obtained a stand or a fighting style or anything else, the controls are quite simple. Your left click will do some default punches in a 5-hit string, with the 5th hit knocking down. If you double tap right click, you'll do a heavy punch that can guard break, and if you hold F, you block. That's all your combat capabilities. As for movement, you can hit Alt to dash. If you're holding any direction, when you press Alt, it will dash in that direction, as well as if you jump up next to a ledge and hit jump again right before you hit the top, you'll be able to vault over the obstacle. And finally, and quite obviously, if you hit control, you'll be able to run. This just makes you go faster. Now once you've acquainted yourself with the controls, you can finally get your first quest by talking to Giorno Giovanna, who's highlighted in a massive yellow cylinder and has a giant orange exclamation point over his head. If you somehow manage to miss this, I don't know what you're doing. He'll ask you to take down 5 security officers, which conveniently are right next to where you are. This means it's time for your first taste of combat. Honestly, the beginner AI can be kind of brutal to new players, but what you really need to know is that your block key exists, because most new players that I see trying to fight the thugs never block. Ever. They just try to mash M1s the whole time and then they end up dying. My best tip for you is to use a whole lot of mouse 1s, and the second you start getting hit by theirs, hold block. The only way you're ever going to get out of their mouse 1s is if you hold block. If you try to attack out of it, you're just going to stand there and get hit over and over and over again. You can also start practicing parries early here if you want to. The parry mechanic is something I haven't talked to quite yet, but if you're about to get hit by a block breaking move and then you block right before it hits you, the enemy will effectively get block broken instead of you. AI in this game is easily manipulated. The AI will almost always either do 4 clicks and then a heavy punch, or 5 clicks in a row. So my recommendation to you is if they start clicking you, block 4 clicks, let go, and then be ready to parry in case they decide to do the last hit as a heavy punch. And if they do a knockdown, so be it, you barely took any damage. Alright, now once you've mopped up the final guy, you're probably not going to be looking too hot on HP. Or maybe you weren't looking too hot on HP after fighting the first guy. Assuming this is the case, this is where our next mechanic comes in, which is posing. When you press P on your keyboard, you'll do a random JoJo pose, these little menacing things will come out of your body, and the real thing that matters is that your health will go up significantly faster than if you just stood there waiting for it to regen. Once your health is topped off, we can go take a look at our skill tree once again, as since we completed that quest, we got quite a few levels that we can use the skill points that are acquired from those levels to put points into our skill tree. You get 2 skill points per level. At this point in the game, my recommendation would be to put your extra points into Vitality up until this little branch in the path, then get 2 points of Worthiness, which I'll talk about in a second, and 1 point into Sturdiness, which I'll also talk about in a second. Now the reason for those Worthiness points that I just told you to put in is simple. In order to get stands in this game, you need Worthiness, and the amount of Worthiness you need in order to guarantee yourself a stand from a normal stand arrow is 2. Speaking of stand arrows, you just got one from the quest you did, so pop the stand arrow when you have the Worthiness and check out whatever stand you got. Now this is where things can get potentially complicated. Unfortunately for you, there's no system in the game to guarantee you a good stand based on your first arrow. I think there should be something that confirms you to get something at least that has a barrage to start with, but you could end up with something like Mr. President or Aerosmith, in which case you're in trouble. Regardless of what you just got, you should go talk to Giorno again, and he'll give you another quest to go give a suitcase to Koichi, who's in the middle of the map. Now, instead of just running there like a normal person, like you probably should, what I recommend here is that you reset. And the reason I tell you to reset is because those vitality upgrades that I talked about earlier don't actually apply until you've died and respawned. Now I know some of you are asking, well Eclipse, if I got Mr. President or Aerosmith, what do I do? Am I just screwed? And yes and no. Unfortunately, as luck would have it, if you get Mr. President, Aerosmith, or any of the other really bad stands in the game, there's no very simple way to reroll. The way you reroll stands in this game is that you need to find a Roca fruit that randomly spawns around the map, and you need to find another arrow that randomly spawns around the map. Eating a Roca fruit will reset everything you have except for your levels back to 0, including your skill points, which means you have to reapply any skill points that you put in, and then you can use another arrow. You can't use an arrow while you already have a stand, as it just won't let you. Now, as for where you actually find these items, my best recommendation to you is to Google it, because I'm almost certain that people have made guides on how to get items quickly, and I've not done one of those. So if you're looking for that information, I really can't give it to you. And one last note when it comes to stand arrows, Worthiness, and what stands you get, is Worthiness does not affect the rarity of the stand you get. So wasting a bunch of points getting maxed out Worthiness is not going to get you any better stands, so don't waste your points. When using arrows, only ever use 2. Alright, now assuming that you've got a stand that isn't complete garbage, you can go and talk to Koichi finally and continue the quest line. The dialogue here doesn't really matter. What you need to know is that you need to go talk to Giorno, who's behind you, back the way you came. Heading over there, when you talk to him, he'll tell you there are more problems, because of course there are, and he'll say that you need to take down Leaky Eye Luca. So here comes your first boss fight in the entirety of YBA. Once again, assuming that you've acquired a stand with a barrage from your stand arrow or a reroll, Leaky Eye Luca should be a very, very easy fight. Since he doesn't have a barrage, you can freely barrage against him, use almost nothing but mouse 1s, and he will die very easily. But hang on a second. I didn't even tell you about those, so you've still got no idea what you're doing. Well, don't worry, the game doesn't tell you either. In order to use a barrage with a barrage stand, you press E and hold it down, and another added benefit of having a stand is that you have an R, which is effectively a boosted up version of your heavy punch. Once you've taken down Luca, which once again should be a cakewalk, you can talk to Giorno again, and he'll tell you that there are even more problems, and he wants you to go take down... I can't even remember his real name. I'm so used to calling him frickin' Bruce. Oh my god, this is embarrassing. and he'll ask you to go take down Bruno Bucciarati. Now before we go take on Bruno, we've got some skill points to spend after winning that last fight with Luca. Now what you decide to do with these skill points is up to you. As for me personally, since I'm already pretty skilled at the game and know what I'm doing, I decided to get some speed to make things go faster. But if you've struggled with any of the previous encounters, I highly recommend getting more vitality and then resetting to make sure it applies. You also have to consider your stand's abilities and its skill tree, as if you're just using the base stand and you have destructive power nodes available and aren't buying them, you're going to do less damage. My recommendation when it comes to stand skill trees is try to get as much destructive power as you can before you get moves, seeing as destructive power buffs up things like your barrage and your M1s, which is where you're going to get most of your damage anyway. Now as for the Bruno fight itself, this is where the difficulty really starts to ramp up. This fight is by no means difficult, but for somebody who's just starting out, it absolutely can be if they don't know what to look for. The first thing to note is that when you have an NPC and they have a stand available to them, if you don't do a knockdown hit as your opener, they'll immediately barrage you, and this is damage that you really shouldn't be taking. So first things first, open up with a heavy punch of some sort, preferably an R since it does more damage than your right click, rather than trying to open with a barrage or M1s. Now after you've knocked them down, the best course of action is to start using your M1s, not your barrage, which I'm sure is what most of you probably think. The reason for saving your barrage is first of all to condition yourself for PvP later so you don't throw out barrages for no reason, and second of all because if he starts barraging you and your barrage is on cooldown, you can't barrage back. In case you haven't figured it out already, barrages can be used while you're stunned. This means if someone's barraging you, the only move you can do to fight back against them is barrage. No mass ones, no Rs, nothing. Only barrage. So if they do barrage you, you barrage back. Bruno's AI is extremely exploitable, just like most of the other AI in the game. 99.99% of the time, he'll do this specific pattern. 4 mouse ones into a heavy punch, an extended arm grab into a heavy punch, a barrage into a heavy punch, or on very rare occasions, just a heavy punch outright. If you know about these things and are just holding block, honestly, even if you don't parry them and you just block the prerequisites before they hit you with the heavy punch, as long as you're only getting hit by heavy punches and not by their M1s or their barrage, there's basically no reason you should lose this. Now with that win under your belt, you can go report back to Giorno, although you don't really technically have to do this because the next quest flag is actually set off by Bruno in the middle of the map. So for future run-throughs, you can just bypass Giorno and go straight to Bucciarati. Now once you start talking with Bucciarati, this starts you onto the path of the running in circles part of the quest line. There are no fights for quite a while after this. You talk to Bucciarati, who tells you to talk to Giorno, who tells you to talk to Fugo, who tells you to talk to Mista, who kills you, who then tells you to talk to Narancia, who tells you to talk to Abacchio, who tells you to talk to Bruno again. Now, quite honestly, this is where the cracks start to appear when it comes to the YBA quest line. And it's not about the part where you have to run in circles talking to a bunch of people and don't get to actually play. No, it's this next quest you have to get. When you talk to Bruno, he says that you need to acquire $5,000 in order to distract other gang members onto you while they get the real fortune. The problem is, by this point, you only have about $700 if you've only done the quest line. That means you still have to get $4,300, which is not exactly easy. When it comes to how exactly you get this $4,300, it's up to you. You have a few options though. First things first, and probably the least effective method, is you can do repeatable quests to get the money. Since you're already past level 10, you can go talk to this police officer and he'll ask you to take down 5 corrupt cops and he'll give you a reward. The quest completion reward for this quest is a measly $35. And when we factor in the $18 per kill on the security guards, the total reward for going through this entire quest is only $125. The one thing I didn't mention is there are only 3 security guards, so once you've killed the 3, you have to wait for 2 more to respawn, which can take quite a while. In other words, what I'm telling you is it takes an eternity and you only get $125 out of it. It's not worth it, and you will spend forever doing this and quit out of boredom long before you you get the $5,000. This is where I imagine a lot of new players quit the game, but you don't have to quit here because there are more options and you don't just have to do the most obvious method. Yeah, you see these sewer grates? These sewer grates are actually pass-throughable, and there's a sewer system in this game. If you pass through the sewers and go where I go, there's an area where 3 zombie henchmen are waiting for you. These zombie henchmen are relatively weak and easy to kill, and each one of them you kill gives you $55, meaning just going down here and killing 3 henchmen already gets you more money than that entire quest that you did earlier. Honestly though, even if you did it this way, you would still have to kill 90 of these guys to get your $5,000, and killing 90 of these guys in a row with no reward other than cash is probably not worth your while either. So this brings us to the final solution, which is selling items. This person right here is the shopkeep. They'll buy any of the items that you randomly find around the map. I already talked about it a little bit earlier, but finding the spawn points for these items is something you'll have to do by yourself. I can't help you with that here. Some items like roca fruits sell for upwards of $500, which is a lot. Compared to the rewards of doing everything else, this is effectively the only way to make money at this point in the game. This is a problem, and I'm gonna take a quick break from the guide here to just complain. Why in the hell is this requirement even here? I feel like it doesn't do anything but stop people from playing. You're not playing the game while you're running around the map looking for items, and then the items you do get, you'd probably want to use for, oh, I don't know, trying to get cooler or better stands, but you can't. You have to sell them all in order to get $5,000 so you can complete the storyline. So I don't know, this has almost rubbed me the wrong way, but I'm not gonna harp on it too long. Once you've finally sold enough items or killed enough henchmen, you'll have your $5,000 and you can go talk to Trish. When you talk to Trish, she won't even take your $5,000. Thank God, if she did, I'd be pissed. And she tasks you with going to take down Fugo and his Purple Haze. Now, despite the fact that Purple Haze is a horrible stand, don't at me, Fugo is hands down the biggest new player hurdle I've seen ever. New players have a hellish time trying to take down this boss, and I think it's mostly just because they don't really use their heads and they just keep throwing themselves at it over and over again, expecting a different result. What I recommend you do before you fight Fugo, hopefully you haven't screwed up your skill tree too bad, even though I told you to just do whatever, I'm sorry, is that you should get some speed. Ideally speed all the way up to the second to last node. These extra speed nodes will help you easily cheese this boss. Now, in case for some reason you're honor bound and you really want to beat this boss legitimately, I'll attempt to help you out. Fugo is another one of those bosses that the F key is extremely effective against, meaning you can just hold block a lot of the time. You also need to be ready to dash a lot, because if you sit in the poison, you're going to die. Here's what Fugo does. He does 4 punches, and then a bulb breaker punch. I don't think it's actually called that, I forget what it's called. But it's a blockable and parryable attack that if it lands on you, makes a giant smoke cloud. When he lands this giant smoke cloud, you need to dash away from it. Because if you stand there, he's almost always going to barrage afterwards, and then you're gonna get stuck in the poison and nearly die. Like I do here because I'm an idiot. Your biggest asset is movement. That's the reason that you need to get speed. If you're trying to do this fight and you don't have any agility, you're in trouble. Excluding the cheese factor, you are just not going to be able to get out of the poison and you're going to die. He also chucks bulbs at you every once in a while, which you can block, as well as once in a blue moon, he throws out a heavy punch, but he's never going to do this unless his other moves are already on cooldown. Now that I've talked about the loser way of beating it, we talk about cheese, the way that you should beat it if you're struggling. First of all, if you have any stand with a pilot, i.e. White Snake, Hierophant Green, any of those, I forget the others, you can go up onto this little tree ledge here, and if you pilot your stand off of it, he can't really get you, and you can just beat him up, and there's nothing he can do. For some reason, AI is attracted to your player and ignores your pilot, so you can just destroy him. And the other method, and the main reason for getting all the speed, is a whole lot of knockdowns. If you rely entirely on your R and your heavy punch, and you just keep punching him every time he gets close and then backing up, he can't get you. There's nothing he can do. He's incompetent. He'll just keep getting knocked down over and over and over again, and as long as you block his bulbs every once in a while, there's nothing you can do. Sometimes he'll start a barrage, but if he does that, then you just barrage him when he gets up since his barrage is on cooldown. Doing this, you can easily beat him with taking next to no damage. So if you're struggling with the Fugo Fight, here you go. Easy cheese. He's done. Now that you've defeated Fugo, you can go back and talk to Trish again, which is quite the hike, and don't worry, the hikes don't end here. When you talk to Trish, she'll tell you that she's not safe yet and you need to go take out Pesci, or Pepsi, or whatever the hell his name is. Now Pesci is, wouldn't you guess it, all the way at the train station, so you have to trek all the way across the map again. So put on your favorite running shoes and let's get rolling all the way over there. Pesci as a boss is probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, storyline bosses in YBA. And the reason for this is because he has two attacks that if you block, you get block broken no matter what. They can't miss, they can't be canceled. It's rough. Basically, Pesci has effectively 3 attacks. He has his Rod Auto Pull, his Rod Throw, and his Piercing Hook ability. The Rod Throw and Piercing Hook are 2 abilities that are quite difficult to aim by a normal player, but because it's a bot, they never miss. So in other words, you have to make sure as much as possible that Pesci cannot use these 2 moves. This means pressure, pressure, and more pressure. You want him to do almost exclusively Rod Pull and nothing more. Rod Pull is a blockable and parryable attack, but you don't really need to parry it in order to get damage. As long as you block it, you'll be fine. The opener for the Pesci fight is the same as all the other ones. You want to start with a ragdoll. If you don't do a ragdoll, then he'll use his Rod Pull straight away, and you don't want that. After the ragdoll, M1 him until he starts M1ing you, and then hold block until he does the pull. When he does the pull, barrage him, use M1s, R him down at the end of it, and then try to do more M1s again until hopefully either his thing is off of cooldown again and he'll try to Rod Pull, or you get your barrage back, or the worst case scenario, he knocks you down with Rod Throw. You just need to make sure that you're putting on enough pressure that at the very least, all he can do is a Rod Throw before Rod Pull is off cooldown again. Because if you're not fast enough and he gets to use Rod Pull and the piercing move, you're going to take a ton of damage. As long as you're unrelenting with this boss fight, you should be able to come out on top, but I can see this taking quite a few attempts, as for beginners, this boss is brutal. Honestly, even for returning players, this boss is hard. The design on it is just not very good. Giving a boss a bunch of attacks that are hard to land and then giving it an aimbot is a recipe for disaster. But there is good news once you've finally defeated him. Logic would tell you that after you defeat Pesci, you have to go and talk to Trish again. But thankfully, just like the Bruno thing I talked about a long time ago, you don't actually have to do that. And thank God you don't, because the next boss you have to fight is, you guessed it, all the way at the end of the train station. No, you don't have to go back to Trish. You can go straight to talking to Mista, and he'll just assume you already talked to Trish and skip that whole dialogue thing, meaning that you can go straight here and you don't have to run another 50 miles. Now that we're here though, we have to beat Ghiaccio, and that's no easy feat either. Ghiaccio is one of those bosses that if you're not patient and you're not careful, you will get obliterated over and over and over again. And if you are careful, you'll beat it with your eyes closed. Basically, the thing is, Ghiaccio only really has one move that does any manner of damage that you have to worry about, and as long as you never get hit by it, you'll be fine. And that move, of course, is the Flash Freeze, the giant ice move. This move, as long as you're moving left or right and keep your distance and wait until he uses the move and then go in for your damage, you'll be fine. But if he does hit you with the move, you're in deep. The move does a ton of damage, is unblockable, and removes your stand if you get hit by it. It is incredibly powerful, and you never want to get hit by it. I do an absolutely awful job fighting the boss in the background here, but basically, you should never be near the boss while he has this move off of cooldown. Run in circles until he uses it, and then get your damage. If you try to do it in any other way, you are just going to die. Earlier when I said that you needed speed in order to fight Fugo, well, that applies about 10 or 20 fold here. If you don't have enough speed, you are going to die. You won't have a chance. You need to run away from this boss constantly or he's gonna kill you. But as long as you keep your distance and you don't do anything too stupid, Honestly, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to beat this one on your first try. Just be careful, don't get greedy, wait for him to use flash freeze, go in for damage, rinse, repeat, and it should be relatively easy. Now that you've defeated Ghiaccio, you don't really have to be anywhere near here anymore. So my recommendation is pop open your skill tree, upgrade some of your points a little bit, ideally some vitality, and then reset, because you don't want to walk all the way back there. If you want to, you can talk to Mista, but all he's going to tell you is that you need to go to Bruno, and I'm going to tell you that anyway. And I'm also going to tell you that he's a liar, and you don't even need to go to Bruno. You still need to go to the castle, because that's where the final boss lies, but if you talk to Bruno, all he'll do is tell you some story bits, say that he wants to betray the boss, yada yada, ask if you want to go with him, and you can just ignore him, walk right past him, and head up to the top of the castle. When you get to the top, you have to talk to Giorno, and Giorno will tell you that you need to take on the big bad himself, Diavolo. Diavolo is one of the most intimidating bosses in the entire game, and despite that, if you know what you're doing, he's a complete pushover. And I know some of you that have played through and aren't very good are probably like, what are you talking about? Diavolo's impossible, or he's so hard. And no, he's not. Diavolo has an absolute obsession with using chop. He loves the chop move. And the thing about chop is that it's fully blockable. If you just hold block against Diavolo, he's always gonna do the chop first, no matter what. Whether it's at random, whether it's after a barrage, whether it's after 4 clicks, he's always gonna start with chop. So if you just block the chop and hold block some more, and he does 4 clicks, then he's always gonna do a heavy punch, and you can parry it. You can basically just sit here for 6 eternities and block everything he has, and he'll never be able to hit you. Now obviously you can't just sit here and block forever, so you need to get damage. When can you get damage? Well, you've got a few options. Number 1, wait a second after you parry his heavy punch so that the epitaph goes away, and then you attack him. Speaking of that epitaph, if he's ever glowing red, do not hit him. Please, for the love of God, don't do it, trust me. Second of all, you can also attack him after his barrage is almost done. Assuming you block the barrage, wait until it's about to be finished, and then hit him with the barrage of your own. If you just trade out these 2 bits of damage by doing a parry and then 4 clicks, blocking the barrage, doing a barrage back, hitting him a few times, holding block again, it'll take a little while, but you'll win every time. This boss is incredibly easy. There is basically no reason you should lose this, and even if you do lose once or twice, once you've figured out the pattern, it's really simple. Once you've finally eliminated Diavolo, you can go and talk to Giorno again, and that'll conclude the storyline. He'll give you a Requiem arrow that you can't use. For anyone who doesn't know what the Requiem arrow does, it allows you to upgrade any stand that has a Requiem form if you max out your worthiness and use it while you have that stand equipped. If you're curious if your stand can be Requiemed or not, just Google YBA stands, and the wiki page has all of the Requiem stands on it. So if your stand doesn't have a Requiem version on there, it can't be a Requiem stand. And the reason I say you can't use the arrow is because you need to be Prestige 1. So even if you did have something that you could Requiem, you wouldn't be able to do it until you Prestige. We're getting to Prestiges though. Basically, you've finished the storyline, but it doesn't end here. You're not out of the woods yet. Not by a long shot. So you remember those sewers with the zombie henchmen that we were in earlier? Yeah, you're gonna spend a lot of time down there from now on. Welcome to probably the absolute worst part of YBA outside of grinding RNG stands. I'm talking about the grind for levels past the storyline, especially at Prestige 0. For those who weren't aware, for every single time you prestige, there's a multiplier applied to the XP you get. So in other words, you get more XP the higher prestige you are. This is presumably to compensate for the fact that there are more levels every time you prestige. But what this ends up really doing is it makes the grind from when you finish the storyline to 35 when you're prestige 0 excruciatingly long. Never mind the fact that doing the optimal thing means that it takes forever of you doing the same thing over and over and over again. Speaking of the optimal thing, I'm killing zombie henchmen and doing the quest for level 20. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, well hang on, you're over level 20. why aren't you doing the level 25 quest? And there's a very good reason for this. The level 25 quest has you kill vampires, which are further away and take longer to kill. And to contrast this, the level 25 quest only gets you 100 more XP than the level 20 quest does. The level 20 quest gives you 300, and the 25 quest gives you 400. With the amount of time it takes to run all the way to the vampires, kill them, and come back, you can do the other quest 1.5 or 2 times, making the extra 100 XP not even remotely worth it. Never mind the fact that there's a little trick you can do with the zombie henchman quest where you can effectively kill all 3 of them at the same time, shaving your time down even more. But at the end of the day, it means that you have to kill the same zombie henchman a lot. And the kicker is, you're not even safe when you get to level 30, because you'd think you get to level 30 and then you can go kill Dio. But nope, that's not a good idea either, because Dio's so far away and takes so long to respawn that his XP isn't worth it either. And guess how much XP Dio gives you? 450. Yes, that's right. Only 50 more XP than the one you do at level 25. That's absolutely pitiful. That's completely ignoring the fact that the new buffs to the world make fighting Dio miserable now. So he's hard to kill, and he gives you no XP, and he takes forever to respawn. In other words, from level 26 all the way up to level 35, you do nothing but kill henchmen. And oh my god, does it take a long time. I can't quantify it here. I just watch. So there's all my grinding from all the way from level 26 to 35. The main problem here is that, do you want to know how long it took me to complete the storyline? About an hour, and that was with taking my time, fighting bosses more than once in order to get extra footage, and just generally not going very quickly. I also had an about 10-minute break in between. Now, do you want to know how long it took non-stop farming zombie henchmen pretty much the whole time, excluding the one time I fought Dio and fought vampires? 40 minutes. And that was almost, if not as fast as possible. That means that if I went through the story as quick as I could, I would have spent more time fighting zombie henchmen than I would have doing the entire storyline. That's a pretty massive problem in my opinion. I know this is mostly supposed to be a tutorial video, but we're pretty much at the end here anyway. And come on, man, why does it take so long? If they massively upped the XP given on the Dio boss and made it respawn faster, it would be way more reasonable. But the way it is right now, it takes forever. Now that we've hit max level though, we can prestige, which will increase our max levels by 5, but put us back to level 1. Honestly, the massive amount of grind you have to do at prestige 0, and just in general, I know is a huge turnoff for a lot of people, because I've tried to introduce people to the game, and the second I get to that zombie henchman segment where you have to kill the same enemies over and over again, most people click off and just quit. At least most people I know. It honestly kind of surprises me that there are so many people that are willing to put up with it. But I guess it's working, so I might not like it, but it doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. The first part of the guide is done though. I'm out of footage, so you're probably looking at a black screen right now because I got nothing left. If you liked what you saw and you'd like me to continue doing this for things like PvP and specs and that kind of stuff, I will. And if you don't want me to do it, then you can leave a dislike and tell me in the comments about how much you hate me. Anyways, with that all being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.